Yeah, I used to use Teams a lot and I hated every minute of it. But there are some companies, people, whatever that we work with that like that's all they use. And yeah, I just loathe it. It just doesn't work very well most of the time. It always has, it's so buggy. And
Yeah.
everybody complains about it. And then they still keep using it. And I'm like, well,
And I just found the interface like completely non-intuitive. Like I was trying to do,
yeah.
what was I doing? I think I was when I was building the website for Forged in the Backcountry, and I used like an overseas web developer. And so the
Hmm.
whole project was in Teams, and just like the file structure and where things were, I'm like, I am not a dumb guy. Like, at
Right,
least I
right,
have
right, right,
faith that
right.
when I can't figure something out, I can at least say to myself, this is probably not a great piece of software because
Right,
I'm not an idiot and I'm pretty tech savvy and
right.
I don't know where anything is right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I think my mentality is around like things I owned and used. It's like, well, if it doesn't work, that's on me. Like I can't figure out how to do it. Now I'm like, my attitude is completely shifted. I'm like, if I can't figure it out pretty quickly, like there's something going on here, and it's not necessarily. I'm like, either I'm a unique idiot in the landscape, or which is always a possibility, or they just didn't think it through very well, or they just don't care. I don't know, something. So,
Well,
anyway,
this is interesting point, and this will probably come up later in our conversation, but I've kind of come to the same opinion with product features. Like
totally,
I'll review something for like
absolutely,
6 to 9 months. I'll put out this review, and every single time somebody will be like, "Oh, you idiot! Didn't you know it did this?" Or
right,
the manufacturer will get in touch and be like, "Oh, I can't believe that you left out X." And I'm like, I do this for a living. If I
yeah.
had this product in my hand for 6 months and I didn't know it did X, this is on you. You did not do a good job of communicating to the end user that it had whatever feature set you wanted to make sure that people knew it had.
Well, I have a very specific example. This is jumping way ahead though, but with one of the products that you have that we're
Okay.
going to make, which we don't have to get into now, but
Okay.
there is what I thought was a very obvious feature for one of these products that almost nobody understood.
Hmm.
No, none of our testers understood
Okay.
intuitively. And so we went back and we have spent, I can't tell you how many hours with information to make sure it is like abundantly obvious to people. Something, again, I thought it was obvious, but when we realized that some very smart people in our test group didn't think it was obvious, we're like, that's not on them. That's not on the customer. That's on us.
Yeah.
So, anyways,
I
yeah.
don't think enough people like I did a ton of consulting with Lululemon on customer experience journeys, and
Uh-huh.
the amount of money they spend on like curating that journey and understanding like how people are going to interface with the product and what the sticking points are going to be. It's one of the areas I think that the hunting companies in specific are very weak at. And
Yeah.
even like, I love the guys at EXO, but I remember when I was prototyping the K4, I said to Steve, you got to include an info card with this thing because there's some features like they did that updated laser molly cut stuff. And it's like a few years later, I think it's a more industry standard now that people understand how to weave
Oh, I know
the
exactly what you're talking
flaps
about.
through and like put in.
It's
And I'm like,
so annoyingly,
dude,
it's
no
not
one's going to
user
know
intuitive.
how to do this.
I
They're going
didn't
to
know how
put
to do
things
it.
on wrong
Yeah.
and then it's going to fall out. And I'm like, a little glossy card with a couple of pictographs with all the like highlighted features would cost you next to nothing. But it's like, if you don't like, I love when companies include QR codes with links to videos.
That's what we do a
Like,
lot of now.
that's the
Yep.
other thing that
Yep.
blows my mind is like, what was I doing? I was reviewing some SIG stuff and trying to find updated videos on some of their optics was like a needle in a haystack. And I'm like, this should not be like, I should open this box. There should be a QR code on top. I should point my phone at it and an up to date playlist in YouTube with
Yep.
all the like, well titled, short, to the point videos with all the different features. Like, that should just be table stakes at this point.
It should be. We do. Yeah. No, it's funny you mentioned that because we spend a lot of time talking about this. So every time if you buy like a tent from us, you get a follow-up email that shows you how to set it up properly, how to
Yep.
seam seal your tent, whether or not you have us do it or you do it, and how to connect the insert. So you're going to get an email with those instructional videos, just like boom, 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 boom. And then like what we're doing with all of our products is doing the QR code. So with our stove, when you
Yep.
open up our stove right there's a big giant red sticker that says, scan me before use. It's like a
Perfect.
stop.
Yep.
And that takes you straight to like, how to set it up and then how to burn in your stove. And we're doing the same thing with all of our new products now is like QR codes. So you get an automatic email with instructions, and then you get hopefully the QR code. Hopefully people pay attention to one of the two of those. Not everybody does, but it has eliminated, I can tell you, it's eliminated a lot of emails and phone calls for us. And it's just a better customer experience when you don't have to go searching. It's annoying when you have to then contact the company to be like, I don't
Yep.
understand how this works.
Yep.
That's a really annoying thing as a consumer to have to deal with.
It was on me when I was testing and I'm going to say this correctly, the Absorka. Uh, and I took it out for the first half of my goat hunt, and I'm like, it's a teepee. I know how to put up teepees. And I put it up, and I'm like, this isn't, I'm not getting the like nice taut at every corner, maximize the room on the inside kind of setup that I'm looking for. And whatever, we muscled through it for like those first 4 or 5 days. And then I went back into town to reload on some stuff and went back out for a second half. And while I was in town, I was like, I'm going to watch a video on this. And you had a great video on staking out the 4 corners, which for a teepee is very non-intuitive because you think they're like some type of hexagonal shape. What I've done before with my big seek is I do the radius method where I take the center pole and I lay it down in the cardinal directions, and I put in 1 corner each.
Yeah.
But your teepees are not perfectly.
They're not round.
They're not round. Right. So, which is why that method, maybe it would work if you did the 4 off corners. But anyways, I went back out into the field and I did that method and the way you described it was great too, because it's like put some tension on it, but then let it go. Like you don't want it tight to all 4 corners. And it was like, dude, it was perfect. And it took me like, 3 minutes to watch a video. And because it was a slightly non-intuitive method of setting it up, I don't think you're just going to stumble on that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So one of the things that has always driven me nuts, still drives me nuts about teepee tents is round tents it is like you need a master's degree to pitch that thing the same way twice. You can't do it. I mean, well, it's not to say you can't do it, but like, you need to pull out like a graphing calculator and like some math and some out. You know what I mean? Like you need a calculus formula. And so all of our tents, some people, if people who have used our line of tents understand that they are the same whether you're setting up the 1 or the 8. It's the same damn principles, which is like it's a square or rectangle. So it all starts with 4 corners. And once you get those 4 corners square, then the rest of it's easy. You don't have to do any math. It's just a matter of like putting your pole in the middle. And then, so I wanted it to be super simple. If you've never done it before, there's a little bit of a learning curve, but once you do it once, you're like, oh, okay, this is the same for all these tents. I can do it fast and quick. But yes, I know what you mean. Having used a lot of teepee style tents, I don't think I ever felt like I got a great pitch on a circular tent. And if I did, it took a lot of messing around. A
lot of pegs in, a lot of pegs out.
Yeah,
the other thing I like about your method is it solves the one-man setup issue with the bigger teepee tents.
Right.
Because like, let's face it, I think most people are like, listen, you get inside, hold this thing up, and I'm just going to wander around aimlessly outside and move these pegs around until we get the perfect pitch. But I took that Absorka in by myself, which albeit is like way overkill, but still at 2 pounds. I was like, well, why not take it? You know what I mean? It's still less than a regular tent.
Right.
And I was only by myself. So it was a perfect method to set it up by itself and still get that pitch where you're going to maximize the space inside.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry. We went way into, I feel like I took us way into the weeds off the.
No, it's all good.
Jay, so
I'm trying to almost have less direction with podcasts these days and just have more conversation. I find when I try and manage them too much, I feel like they're a little too manufactured. But how's your season been, man? You were up my way. How'd that go? Struggle?
Man, let's see. I wouldn't describe it as a struggle. I would just say I don't like to blame circumstances on hunts.
Yeah.
There's two types of people in this world, people who own their, make it happen no matter what, and there's people who are like the weather, whatever,
The
right?
moon
Like
phase,
the
yeah,
moon phases
whatever. Yeah.
weren't at, or I just couldn't go through the brush,
Yeah.
There's a million of those things, and I have a longer list than anybody else out there. But so what I will say is that conditions were difficult, but not insurmountable when I was bow hunting up in Canada. A couple
You were there
things
kind of
that
early, like it was warm, wasn't
it
it?
was
And,
really
and
hot.
that makes that hunt hard. And I know you
So
don't want to
yeah,
blame circumstances, but I've been there multiple years and now my own tags bordering that unit.
yeah,
So
yeah,
I
yeah.
will
So
take it on the chin for you. You want that hunt, the colder the better.
colder the better, and just a little bit of wind.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
so
I'll even go more than that. You
yeah,
want that shit howling, man, because that's
yeah.
the
It was
only
dead
form of cover
calm.
you get.
Yeah, because it's as it's like wide open. So we found big deer. I mean, I was real picky. I snuck in on one really nice buck. I mean, he was a great buck, and I was there sitting on him at like 60 yards, and I was just like, you know what? Like now, like he's not. I've gotten to the point where I've killed enough really nice deer that I really only want big deer, like really
Yep.
big deer. And the other thing, because it was the difference between last year and this year, there were a lot of leaves on the bushes, and so some of
Okay.
the coulees that we would check, like you couldn't see shit in the bushes
Right.
where they're bedding. So there might have been deer in there, but you can't see them when they're bedded, and that's when you need to see them where they're bedded so you can stalk on them. So you couldn't see a lot of the bedding habitat if there was any brush because it was still full, and there was still foliage on all the bushes. I mean, when I say dead calm, I mean it was like calm as a cucumber. Or the other issue was just that the wind throughout the day would switch anywhere from 180 to 270 degrees pretty commonly throughout the day,
Yep.
morning, afternoon, and back and forth. So planning a stalk was complicated because you had to anticipate where the wind was, going now, and then where it was going to be 2 hours from now, 3 hours from now. And I got in, I got into like 7 yards on a really great buck and sat on for like 4 hours. And that's on me because and then the wind switched and he blew out. But I should have done, there were things I could have done to get him to stand up and shoot him, and I didn't. So in hindsight, that's on me.
That's
I found
such a hard position though, too, because it's like
yeah,
then you try and force it and then you're kicking yourself
if it
because you
doesn't work
forced
out.
it and you didn't get a
Right.
good shot. So it's like I don't think there's a singular right answer for those situations.
There isn't, but I knew the wind was going to shift.
Right, right, fair.
So like I should have taken that chance. So that's on me. And what I like to do in that situation is a trick my buddy Brian taught me, which is if I'm that close and I know exactly where that deer was, which I do, I could see the tip of his antlers, come to full draw and then snort wheeze on him, like a whitetail.
Yeah,
And they usually are going to give you need to be ready to roll, like
yeah,
shoot as soon as he stands up, and it's going to be a frontal shot more than likely. But that close, know the yardage. So like there's no messing around, right? I could have
yeah.
done it and had a good shot at him. Didn't do it. And then we found, two other bucks. One other buck that ended up getting killed by another hunter that went in the 190s. It was a great buck.
Oh wow, that's a
Um,
nice deer.
it was a great deer, and he was with two other bucks, and I got to like 51 yards on him, and then wind switched again. So I'm not blaming those circumstances, but it was very, very frustrating to
Yeah,
have a consistent, it's like a mild, breeze, and then it would just switch for 5 seconds to go completely opposite direction. It was just that shifty wind the entire trip, so we didn't really have any days where we had a consistent wind, which is rare for up in the prairie country, as you know. Usually there is a breeze
yeah.
most days, right?
And most days it's howling, and most days
Most days
it'll
it's howling.
switch, but it's more like a mid-afternoon kind of switch.
Yeah.
Like you
And
can
it'll
plan
rotate
on it.
slow. Yeah, you can plan it and it'll
Yep,
slowly rotate.
yep,
It's not like constantly going back and forth.
yeah. And
So,
it is such a weird set of challenges for that hunt. Like both our hunters, so we had 4 hunters this year, 2 tagged out, 2 didn't, and the 2 that tagged out, both trad hunters, one at 10 yards and one at 4 yards.
mm,
And they had both been there before. And it's funny because you tagged out last year, but almost voluntarily didn't tag out this year. But I want to start tracking data. I think people are vastly more successful on that hunt second time around because there is so many things you can't prepare yourself for on that hunt that you're just like dropped into the fire on the
Mhm.
first trip up there. And I think when people come back, they understand it a lot more, and those unique set of challenges that are really hard to prepare somebody for or even explain until you're in it. Like I'm trying to think, like maybe Coos deer in Arizona is like somewhat similar for some of the challenges, but I don't know how many other hunts that are like that.
Yeah. I do think there's also a perception that like bow hunting for mule deer in Canada is sort of like a slam dunk type deal. And it is so hard. I've had
Yeah.
that comment from some people down here at least in the States. They're like, well, there's just giants everywhere, right? And I'm like,
Yeah.
no, man, there are good deer around, but it is full on as hard to find them as any other hunt I do throughout the year. I have an easier time finding big deer, frankly, in my home state than I
Yeah.
do up in Canada. But I love that style of hunt up there, and it is incredibly challenging. That's really why I like it is because it's just, you know,
I
you're
say it's a hunter's hunt. Like you have
it
to
is a hunter's hunt. That's a great
listen,
description.
there's easier
Yeah,
deer to kill and you can go get a big
totally.
deer easier somewhere else too. Like, and I'm trying
Absolutely.
to sell these hunts. So that's me being as honest as I can. Um, there is something about it though, because you get to put a notch on your belt up there that's unlike any other notch. Like
I
John
agree.
Barklow, when he went up with Lander, he said it's varsity level bow hunting. And I
It
think that's
is.
one of the best ways to put it. Like anybody who's killed a deer up there with their bow kind of goes in a special little category for me. Like I did it, I was unsuccessful. Um, I'm looking forward to doing more of it. The other thing that's gone on is they have gone very heavy with rifle tags in all of those units near where we
Yes.
are,
Yes.
like triple digit rifle tags for the
Hmm.
last 3, 4, 5 years. This year they gave out 6 in my unit.
Yeah, they've
I'm
noticed the
sure
decline.
Harder's
Yes.
unit is
Yeah,
similar.
it
I
is.
had like 2, 3 year old bucks running around everywhere. 4, 5, 6s, not as much. And so I am very excited if they keep those tag limits in those single low double digits for the next 2, 3 years. We will get back to the point where it was 10, 15, 20 years ago. And it is kind of that ridiculous, like monsters running
Hmm.
around everywhere that people
Yeah.
expect in Alberta. But I mean, no one would, it's not what it was 20 years ago, but nowhere is. I think it's actually, considering the beating mule deer have taken in the States, I think those units are doing great in comparison. Like maybe they aren't what they
Yeah.
were, but they're still a hell of a lot better than what a lot of, look at Wyoming, a lot of what
Yeah.
you guys have had gone on in
Yep.
Idaho, like a lot of
Better
these
kills. Yeah.
classic mule deer areas in the States have taken a beating.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I do think it is, I mean, to describe bow hunting in Alberta for somebody who's never done it, it's when it's like it's similar to bow hunting anywhere else where most of the time you're trying to bed deer and then sneak in on them. It's very difficult to get in on the hoof unless they're in a coulee,
Yep.
right? But typically you're trying to bed them and then get in on them.
Yep.
Most of the time there's at least where we hunt, there's like sandhill, flat country with some ponds and whatever, and then there's some like river coulee stuff. And if they're going to the river coulee stuff, like that's great because then at least you have some topography. But a lot of times those big bucks, at least this year, they were up on the flats, and I was hoping on some of these stocks where I'd have to go like a half a mile between me and them that I would have like, a foot and a half tall grass to cover me at some points, right? And you're just like trying to plan out a stalk and you're looking out and you're like, this is completely flat, but it's not. There's some subtle topography changes and the grass might be in some places. Maybe you get 2 foot tall grass, maybe it's a foot and a half. This year was a good year, wet year,
It was
right? So there's
taller
taller
than
grass.
I've ever seen it out there.
Yes.
100%.
But at the same time, it is, I mean, planning a stalk out there, it is varsity level bow hunting because it's not a lot of times it's you're dealing with subtleties in terrain, topography, and vegetation that it looks impossible when you look at it. Sometimes you're like, there's no way I can get in on that deer. And then you get down in there and you're like, well, maybe if I crawl for 500 yards, I can get to that brush patch. And then from that brush patch, I can get, you know what I mean? So
Yep.
you spend a lot of time crawling. And that buck I got to 27 yards on, I crawled for a long ways to get to him. And I just had a little bit of grass and a tiny little, maybe a 2 foot tall rise that was enough to keep his eyes off of me. And that's it. So anyways, yeah, it's really fun. I really enjoy it because it is so difficult. And that's the other thing that's really fun up there is there are quite a few deer. So I stalked in on a number of like really good bucks and then just backed out, like got in because I couldn't, there was mirage effects really bad. So I could see like good frame, couldn't see like tine length. I would have to sneak in to where they were bedded. I'd get in on them to like bow range and I'd be like, yeah, not quite what I'm looking for and just back out. So I did that quite a few times.
I have a question for you about this because you're a fairly analytical guy. Because for me, I was surprised by how bad the Mirage was. And I think it's because you're looking across the flats. So you're getting
Yeah.
all the Mirage. So it's like you're looking through all of it. Whereas we're used to being in the mountains and we're either up glassing down or down glassing up. And then we're like cutting through the Mirage on a perpendicular. So even if something was further or it was hotter, it would not normally be as bad. But especially, and the pain of it is, it seems to be worse as it's warming up. Like that first 45 minutes to 60 minutes, it's the worst. Then once it hits kind of a regular temperature, it seems to settle down a little bit.
Yes.
But I thought it was significantly worse than I would have expected. And the bitch of it is, it's that first 45 to 60 minutes of the day when you're seeing 90% of your bucks out there, and it's really hard to nail down like what is that buck? Like, and some of their body shapes are so big, and then it's like, I mean, he doesn't look big, but if that's a 300-pound deer, that is a big deer, and there's nothing for scale. Like it definitely makes estimating, score challenging.
Right. I thought the Mirage this year up in Canada was the worst I've ever experienced anywhere I've hunted in my entire life. It was
Yeah.
really weird. And it was the same thing. I noticed the exact same thing you did. So you could make out deer, but you couldn't oftentimes even tell that if they were a buck, if they were further than like, I don't know, 600, 700, 800 yards.
Yep.
And you can see for miles, right?
Yep.
And yeah, so, and then, right around after an hour or so, things would stabilize a little bit, and then you could actually see a little bit, and then it would get worse after that for the rest of the day. But we had cold days. So I always maybe naively thought that Mirage was caused by heat.
Yeah.
We had days below freezing.
Same.
Couple mornings below freezing. It was pretty cold, but it was windy, and it was like just as bad on those days as it was on the warm mornings. So I don't know what caused it. In fact, I left thinking that I need to talk to somebody who's an expert on this and understand like what really impacts the daily fluctuation and mirage effect. And there was no difference. We had different brands of glass, harder than I did. We tried different things. It's like same exact look.
I had 15s, I had big spotters, I had compact spotters.
Yep.
This was the other thing for a guy who tests and reviews optics. You really have to take into part environmental conditions. Like I've had people email me like, "Oh, this glass is terrible," and it's like, "Did you use it one day for 15 minutes at 3 o'clock in the afternoon?"
Right.
Because like my Swaro 85 ADX 85 is garbage then too. Like that was almost the nice thing. Like I'm looking through a $5,000 spotting scope that looks like ass at 900 yards.
Right.
Like. This is not a function of the glass. This is a function of the environmental conditions. And it was the same thing. I was having problems because the way it would wave and the fact that there's grass. I'm like, are those tines? Are they not tines? And I started to trust gait more than anything else because I would see the way they were walking, and
Correct.
that would clue me into it being, and I'm like, okay, I need to keep my eye on that guy because he is not moving the way those other deer are moving. And if I just stick on him long enough, it would settle down and then I could make out the rack.
Yep, same. Yeah, it was like body size and gait. That's always what usually tips off a mature buck from a non-mature buck or a doe, right? But yeah, it was so frustrating, man, because I could see. Yeah, it was like there were some mornings where I'm like, God, that's a big-bodied animal. I can barely tell there's something above his ears, barely.
Yeah.
And then, but later on, you're like, oh, that was like a 180 buck.
Yeah.
I couldn't even tell. I had no. I mean, I all I could tell was a big body and like just barely make out something above its antlers, it was super frustrating.
What did you take for glass? Because for me, I thought the 15s were like the MVP of the trip, especially that first hour in the morning, because I had nice wide field of view. They were super bright. I kept going back to those. And then once I found something, I would dig in, further with the big glass.
I just had my Razor, my Vortex Razor 10 by 42 UHDs,
Yep.
which I really do like those UHDs. And then I had the 48X Razor Spotter.
Yep.
And to be super frank with you, like I compared. Ryan had a Swaro binos, and then I guess he had the Razor Spotter as well. No, he had a Swaro Spotter too.
The
Um,
48X, is that the 65 mil?
yeah, 65
Okay.
mil.
Okay.
Yeah. And I couldn't, neither of us there was no noticeable difference, to be super honest with you, between the two. And we did a side by side comparison. I couldn't tell the difference. He couldn't tell the difference. I'm not saying there isn't a difference, but it was not a perceptible difference to either of us. And we both spent a lot of time looking through glass for whatever that's worth. No difference in light refraction, no difference in even like low light conditions that I could tell. That's not a scientific study, but we tried to see if there was a difference in the way the mirage effect was appearing. And it makes sense that it wouldn't matter no matter what glass you're using, because if my understanding of what causes it, right, it's something like the mirage effect, and I'm speaking way out of turn here, something to do with the way like light reflects, or that like heat waves, I thought it was heat waves sort of bend light in the atmosphere,
Hmm.
and that causes that effect. Um, so I don't know why, if you're
I found a
binos, if they're
series
just
of
magnifying.
well, see,
Yeah.
and I think you're hitting the right point here. I actually found a series of posts on a birding forum one time that tried to explain why it actually got worse with some of the better and bigger glass. It had to do with like the size of the exit pupil. And that's why zooming in makes it worse. Like if
Yeah.
you have a 60x spotter, 60's garbage in Mirage. But if you back all the way out to 35 or 40, it actually starts to crispen up on you a little bit. And I think it's because most of those don't have fixed exit pupils. So you're closing the exit pupil a little bit, which I think, and
Mm.
again, I don't know the science on this, minimizes that effect to a certain degree.
I think, yeah, I rarely carry a giant spotter with me, like an 80, 85 mil spotter,
Yeah.
because the conditions have to be, the atmospheric conditions have to be so perfect for you to be able to actually utilize that extra zoom.
Yeah.
Rarely do you have those circumstances, I find, in real world situations. You might have certain times of the day where you do, but
Yep.
it really depends. And typically, I'm like, I don't want to pack around the extra, 2, 3 pounds, hoping that I get to use that extra zoom. I have done it plenty of times,
Yeah.
but 90% of the time, my spotter is going to be the small or mid-size range for that reason.
I have to give a shout out to Vortex, and everybody knows I haven't been super kind to them on some of their products, but their new compact spotter, the optical quality of it, it legitimately impressed me. Like
Yeah,
I
it's
had
good.
the Swaro ATC, the Kawa 13 to 39 mini, and then the Vortex mini, and I had all three all whatever 10 days I was out there hunting, had them in a variety of similar circumstances. And I'm going to say like you, and I know people are going to flame me, but like I legitimately, there's some field of view differences and some other differences, but as far as optical quality, chromatic aberration, amount of light gathering, there was very little, if any, difference in optical quality between those three across a variety of different circumstances. My only issue with that spotter is the ergonomics. The zoom
Mhm.
and the focus wheel are so tight. And I don't know, maybe I just got a bad one, but it's like I was having troubles adjusting them without it physically shifting my pan head, and that bugged me. But I was very surprised by the optical quality and the price. Like it's crazy. A
Hmm.
$1,000 for that piece. I'm sure you can find used ones for 600-700 bucks right now. Those other two are coming in at 2,600 and 2,300 respectively. Like that's insane value.
Yeah, so I just did a late season hunt, and backpack hunt, and I actually ditched my 65 mil spotter
Mhm.
on that hunt and started using the mini razor. And that's that for me. Again, I am an inch counter when it comes to deer. Like
Yeah.
I'm not okay with, I don't shoot just like okay deer anymore. Um, and I take that mini razor, man, and
Yep.
I can count inches on that thing at a pretty far distance. So it has
And it
definitely impressed
weighs
me.
Nothing.
super
That's what I was
light,
taking on all
super
of our
light.
stocks. Obviously, if I was at the truck, I would use some of the bigger glass.
Yeah,
But as soon as we threw the backpacks on, it was one of the minis came with me every time, especially because you're trying to create as small of a profile as possible. And
totally.
what I would do is I would get it set up on the tripod and then I would kind of like belly crawl forward with it until just the spotter, I'd have it turned on it on the side and just the
Yeah.
spotter would be peeking up over the edge and I could kind of turn and look like this. And it was such a perfect piece of gear for that, like for that particular hunt I found for a variety of reasons.
Can I say one thing too? So since we're talking about spotters that I noticed about that Alberta almost changed me from a lifelong angled spotter guy to a straight spotter person.
Interesting.
So the when you're trying to sneak through the brush,
Yeah.
you don't have a lot of cover, and then get your spotter high enough above the grass so you can see what you're looking at and not be too high and have a high profile.
Yeah.
Having an angled spotter, you have to get higher, right? And so you're
Yeah.
exposing yourself more. Whereas harder would have a straight spotter and he's down low looking straight at it. And I'm like, that's the move out here, at least for sure. Like the
Yes.
angled spotter is a disadvantage. The other thing that I was having, because you spend so much time looking through a spotter out there, I was getting like my neck and back were killing me, and maybe it's just because I'm getting older. But I mean, with the straight spotter, especially like with that terrain where you're not off, you're not in mountains where you're looking typically like down or up, but you're just trying to keep your back straight and look straight ahead a lot of time. It seemed as though the straight spotter had better ergonomics for your spine and back. And when you're spending a few hours a day at least looking through them, it adds up. And so I don't know if I'm fully converted yet, but I am going to play around with the straight spotter now. And I've always said they're lame. You shouldn't use a a straight spotter, but
I'll throw
um,
out one more use case, and that's glassing from the truck. So I have a
yes,
little
yeah,
window mount for my
yeah,
spotting scope. And now, obviously, as long as your spotting scope rotates, you can kind of turn it on an angle and then come at it from the side. And I don't have a straight spotter, but that would be another instance where the angled is very difficult to use inside the truck. And with how cold and windy it typically is, glassing from the truck is a phenomenal advantage
totally.
out there.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't do a lot other than Alberta. I don't really ever glass from the truck. It's just not a situation I find myself in, but out there, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So what else did you have going on this season? Were you elk hunting with Callahan?
Yeah, Ryan and I. So I started off. I did a doll sheep in Alaska, which was super fun. Lifelong hunt I've always wanted to do, and that was. I mean, it was a sheep hunt. It was amazing, right?
Yeah.
And then yeah, Ryan and I hunted elk in Wyoming, which was fun. Neither of us killed anything. Not because we couldn't have. I mean, I had some fairly easy shots at some small bulls, but we had seen some very, very large bulls. And this will be out on. I think we filmed it. It was like it will be on one of the Meat Eater YouTube channels, like whatever Callahan's YouTube channel is. I don't know off the top of my head. But I mean, we saw some bulls that were like 360 to 380,
Mm,
several of them. And so that was, you can't unsee that.
right.
And so that was really what we were focused in on. And we had just a phenomenal hunt. I mean, there were really good elk, encounters, and it was really fun. But I wasn't going to, I had another elk hunt later in the year that ended up killing a bull on another archery hunt. And so I wasn't just going to kill an average. I didn't want to kill an average elk, especially in Wyoming, because Wyoming has really good quality
Well, and I don't know how you got
bulls.
your tag, but I burned 6 points this year
Yeah,
in Wyoming. That's a story for another day, but
yeah,
um, you don't want to mess around either because it's like this is like especially with point creep, this is probably going to turn into some place you're getting like once or twice a decade if you're
yeah,
lucky.
yep, exactly. Yeah, and I was lucky. I drew in the random draw
Okay.
with 1 point, so which I never draw anything, so I was very happy about that. Did not expect to draw it. But yeah, you just like it's a fun to hunt big things, right? And so that was what we were kind of focused in on. But we had a great time, really fun time. And then yeah, I came back and I did an archery hunt here in Idaho, just by myself and shot a bull, which was really fun because this I hunted this bull. He was in just kind of this big open area, kind of an old burn, and it was late. It was a late season archery hunt.
Okay.
And, for me, late season archery hunt is all about like not calling.
Right.
Um, they're just, bulls have been called out by, it's a super high pressure area for here. I mean, these elk have been hunted hard. I mean, the amount of boot tracks on the ground in there was substantial.
Right.
When I was there, everybody else had left, which was great, just timing wise. And I was able to sneak in on him from, I don't know, 3/4 of a mile away. Didn't call to him once and just snuck in on him while he was rutting his herd and shot him. So that was fun. Um, and then, yeah, I went to Canada and then hunted. I just got back from a late season mule deer hunt, shot a really great buck. Had a really good, the mule deer, the caliber of mule deer down here in the lower 48, what I saw this year gave me a lot of hope.
Oh,
There's some
nice.
really, really good caliber mule deer and quite a few younger bucks. So I think, we had a severe winter die off. Idaho, Wyoming, northern Utah, really severe. What was that, 2 years ago?
Yeah.
And it's going to take some time for mule deer to recover, and that's in addition to everything else that's affecting mule deer populations. But it was encouraging to just see a lot of young bucks and then some really good quality old deer. So it was really fun. And then I have one last, just in terms of hunting schedule, I have one last trip. I'm going to Oklahoma to hunt whitetails here in right after Thanksgiving, our Thanksgiving.
Nice. Yeah, it was unfortunate. I spent all year kind of prepping for some whitetail hunts in November up in northern BC. I had run cams. I put like 200-pound salt licks out, like really started to build up my own kind of little inventory of spots. And then I was
Mm-hmm.
gone so much with guiding in September and October. My wife rarely asks me to stay home, and she didn't even come out and say, please don't go. But I could just tell when I was kind of like talking about potentially doing a trip in November, I was like, "Oh, you've hit your
Mm-hmm.
limit, man." And the responsible thing to do here is to stay home. So had to pull
Yeah,
the
it's tough.
pull the pin. Yeah, and it is what it is. I I also try and remind myself I'm so fortunate that I get to spend so much of my life hunting now. It's kind of like get over it, man. There's more. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, it's fine. It's
yeah,
fine. It's
and
fine.
I'm going to be going on a late season archery mule deer hunt in an area I feel bad. I didn't even know we had a late season archery mule deer hunt in British Columbia. And it was funny listening to you talk about your late season elk hunt. That is very similar. Like this, I would consider a fairly highly pressured area during the rifle season for mule deer, but there's a 4 point limit. And I'm going in after, and the thing about BC is like archery hunting is just not very popular because most of our units you can hunt mule deer 4 point limit in this unit right up until November 30th. So you're like the
Hmm.
whole rut is rifle. Why would you ever bother? Most guys think, why would you ever bother picking up a bow unless you enjoy some level of self
Right.
torture? Um, but I'm looking forward to going in there for some of the same reasons. I think it's going to be a ghost town. I don't think anybody else is really going to be around, and I think there could be some like big monster threes walking around that
Yeah.
nobody was able to take a poke at. But and I think there's going to be some similar benefits of going in there after most of the pressure, but also some things to keep in mind that these deer have been kind of beat up for the last month. So I'm going to have to keep that in the back of my mind at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. I really love the late season hunting
Yeah.
thing. Most people hate it because it's a measured amount of suffering involved. But I think with the right gear and the right mindset, you can have a really good time. Um, and this is like not a shameless plug for any of our stuff, but like, and I don't know what your BC situation is, but I can speak for in the States, like a lot of those late season hunts. I mean, if you have a stove, a
Oh
hot
yeah.
tent, I mean, we had on this last hunt, it was a 9-day backpack hunt. And so we're about like 10 miles from when we start. And it was like 0 degrees Fahrenheit or 9 degrees Fahrenheit, somewhere in there most nights. So it was getting pretty chilly. But we're warm. We're
Yeah.
warm in the morning, we're warm in the evening. The nights are cold, but you've got, you're not shivering. Good, as like good sleeping bag, you're fine. But you
Yeah.
wake up in the morning and your boots are frozen solid because you've been walking in snow all day. They're gonna get some moisture on them. But you warm them up. You leave the tent warm, and then if you get cold, you can come back and start a fire in there, and it's really nice. And you get rid of most of the people who don't have the right gear. I mean, it is so I have done it. I won't do it anymore, but I mean, I have like just like had a regular, 2-person tent in those conditions. And this time of year where it gets dark at 5 o'clock and gets light at 7:15, 7:30. Those are long, dark periods where
Yeah.
if you don't have a stove, you're just in your sleeping bag, and it's really monotonous. But if you have the right gear, you can have like a very enjoyable experience, drink some tea at night, hang out around a fire, chat with your buddies. Like it's a really nice time of year to hunt.
Oh, 100%. And this is full blown. This is going to be my first teepee stove hunt in a while. I do lots of late season stuff, but like with my goat stuff, January, February, there's literally nothing that burns.
Right, right, right.
And
Yeah.
due to the weather, it's kind of funny because might be planning another one and I'm kind of debating what shelter I want to take. But with how wet it is on that northwest coast, like it's futile trying to find stuff that's going to burn. So that's it presents a whole other host of challenges. But same thing, like I was talking to somebody about my schedule, and one of the things I do on that hunt is I actually get back and I crawl into my sleeping bag for a couple hours before I do anything at night.
Mm.
And I just listen to an audiobook because if I have dinner at like 5 or 6, I lose my mind because it's
Oh, I
like,
know.
what am I supposed to do until 8 o'clock in the morning when it's light enough to start glassing? So I try and break it up, use my sleep system to dry me out a little bit from the day, listen to an audiobook, just kind of chill out. And then I'll get out of bed at 8 or 9 and I'll stay up until like 11 and I have my dinner and kind of just, mess around in camp, maybe take some notes and do some planning for the next day. And then I go back to bed at like 11. Cause it's like in the back, I'm not sleeping on that pad for any more than 6 to 7 hours at best. Like
Right.
my back's going to get sore. I'm going to need to
Totally.
get up. And yeah, it's it's kind of a whole different host of challenges, but yeah, in the right circumstances, the teepee stove combo is a complete game changer.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Just yeah. And yeah, we do like were you hunting by yourself in those situations mostly?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's a lot of just time where you're just sitting there with your thoughts, right?
man.
And some people love it, some people don't. On this last hunt, so the way it worked is it took us 8 hours to go from like base camp to hike in.
Okay.
Okay. And then I shot my deer the next day, first day, which I never like to do because who
Yeah.
wants to kill someone the first day? You don't know what you're missing out on. But he was big enough where I'm like, I know I would be happy to shoot that on the last day.
Yeah.
But then I spent the next 4 days by myself just packing meat,
Oh,
and it took me 4 full days because my deer was another two air miles beyond our camp,
okay.
and not flat, right? This is like super steep mountains, right? So it took me a full day to get the deer back to camp, doing 2 trips, and then I spent 2 more days shuttling meat. So the whole point of that is mostly about like all day I'm just by myself with my thoughts. So I ended up it was like 4 or 5 days, mostly just kind of like all day, every day. And at some point I was like, man, it would be really nice. I wish I would have brought some like headphones so I could listen to like a podcast or an audiobook while I'm just hiking I'm hiking for 7 hours today, packing
Can't
meat.
kill anything else. So
Can't
it
kill
doesn't
anything
matter if you
else.
hear anything. It's pretty late season. Bears aren't an issue. It's one of the hacks I
Yeah.
tell people all the time when they are,
Yeah.
oh, I'm thinking about solo hunting. What do I do? I'm like, pair of Bluetooth headphones, man.
Super good idea.
Because it's the other thing, like you get lonely. And one of the things I like to do at lunch is I'll just put one of the earbuds in so I can still hear stuff. I'm still aware of my surroundings. And I even get more detailed than that. For books, they got to be fun. Don't bring like self-improvement, business building bullshit. It's not the
No.
time for it.
It's not the time for
Sci-fi, fantasy, true crime, like fun stuff that's going to take your mind off of what you're doing. And for podcasts, I like the more like group of guys. Like I'm also into bodybuilding. So there's this one podcast I like is just 4 dudes. And they're talking about everything. Like it's very rarely even about bodybuilding, but you feel like you're hanging out with your buddies for half an hour. And I'll take that little break at lunch or I'll take that little break in the evening and I'll listen to that podcast. And it just breaks up the monotony for me. And I don't feel so alone. And then I'm ready to like, okay, now I can get back into it. I've kind of recharged myself a little bit, but I think those headphones it's an absolute must for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I know better and I didn't do it and
Yeah.
was wishing I had something just to kind of break up just the monotony of just, not talking to another human. And I was hunting with my buddy Charlie, but like, again, he was out hunting during the day. I'd see him at night, which is great, but it does, it does get to you. It gets to me. I know plenty of people who could spend 2 weeks by themselves and that they're totally fine doing it. I spend plenty of time by myself, but I do think there are little things that you're talking about, like having a set of Bluetooth headphones is a really nice way to not let just to break it up and not feel like you're just like going stir crazy from not talking to another human being for a long period of time. It's a really good way to do it.
I also think it's a matter of like, how effective are you staying? Because like we could have a conversation about, do you really need the fancy gear, the fancy optics? And the argument has always been like, no, you can kill without it. But
Sure.
if you're a little bit more comfortable for a little bit longer, you're going to stay a little bit more focused, a little bit more motivated. And I think it's the same thing with any of these tactics to like help out the mental struggle. No, they're not necessary. But if you can stay 5 or 10% more effective because you're a little bit more motivated or feeling a little bit, happier or less alone, I think that's a strong argument that can, affect success over the long term as well.
Yeah, I recently saw, I'm talking about in the last month, somebody who I'm not going to name their name, but I respect, who's a respected backcountry hunter. They got asked a question in a public forum. What what stove do you recommend for a tent, or do you think I should bring a hot tent in? I'm going on a November hunt in like northern Rockies. And their comment was like, if the weather's that cold, I just stay at the truck and wait for the weather to break. I wouldn't take a stove, just save the weight. And I thought that was such a naive comment for that person to make. And I'm like, I was like, you, by staying like comfortable, like if you're up where you want to be and you're comfortable and
Yep.
you don't feel that you don't have this like nagging thought in the back of your head that's like, man, this is getting really uncomfortable day after day. I don't know how much longer I can take this. That gets to you,
Yep.
and it gets to a lot of people, and they end up cutting their hunt short. Seen it happen. I know people who've done that. I've done it. But if you are comfortable in adverse, let's talk about the climatic conditions, you don't have that excuse.
Yep.
You can't say like I was uncomfortable, I was cold. It's like, well, sure, but you had the option to get warm. So, and that's a big deal in the late season, right? So, um, whatever you can do to reduce the amount of just mental excuses to bail on a hunt, I think that's going to increase your odds of success because you're not going to kill shit back at the truck, right? Like the old adage,
Yep.
or just even not being where you want to be at early and late hours, right? You need to be
I
where the animals are when they're showing up, which is early
Yep.
and late. So what are you going to do?
100%. I have the same argument about food. I see people, especially because sheep hunting and goat hunting is so big in BC, and I'll see people bragging, "Oh, I'm taking a pound of food per day or whatever," and I'm like, "What? Like,
Yeah.
do you have any idea the unintended consequence you're having on your decision making process? Like, you're just cutting your feet out from underneath you in order to save a couple ounces, and it's that same thing. Like, if you know you've got someplace to go get dry at the end of the night, you're so much more comfortable pushing it during the day. Like, oh, okay, if I go over that next ridge and I sweat out, or it starts end up like kind of sleeting on me and everything gets soaking wet, it's okay because I got this thing that I can go back and I can reset and I can get everything dry. Or with the food thing, I think it even has unintended consequences. Like or I should say, an unconscious consequence. Like you're not even aware of how it's affecting your decision making process. You're just less likely to hike over the next ridge, less likely to make a
Mhm.
decision that results in you burning
Yeah.
more calories or expending more energy. And we had
Yeah.
this
You're just tired.
conversation. Yeah,
Yeah. You're just tired.
100%.
I'm tired. I don't want to go over there right now.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. So I think this kind of comes back to a question I wanted to ask because I'm trying to remember which of your films it was. It was an elk film when you went on it with an old buddy and you guys didn't get anything. I think it came out, it was this year. Like it came out at the end of
Oh yeah, yeah. Yep.
um, and I want to make a comment on Argali films in general. It was funny. I just had Trail on from Go Hunt the other day,
Mhm.
and I said the same thing about Go Hunt films. Argali films really straddle the line of like the artistic, aesthetic kind of hunt films while still being actually a hunt film. Like some of them go too far. Do you know what I mean? And I don't,
Yeah.
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 And I really appreciate that because I don't watch a whole lot of hunting media. I think part of it is I don't want to like influence my own creativity. I don't want to be too,
Yeah. Yeah.
impacted by artistic decisions other people make. But I thought there was something particularly interesting in that hunt because I struggled with this all the time because there's this spectrum of like 100% completely mission focused. Now that's great if you want to kill and you want to kill big stuff, but there's this impact on your perception of the hunt and other people who are with you, their experience. And then there's this like, yeah, just going to go out and see what happens. And it's like, okay, were you just going on a camping trip and carrying a bow with you? Like, and what I found interesting was I've always thought with your personality and seeing how you talk about stuff, you were more comfortable. And I don't want to say you're just messing around, but you always seem like the guy that doesn't put too much pressure on himself. And you're like, hey, if it doesn't happen, like that's okay. And I've always really respected that. But then hearing how your friend was talking about your personality on that hunt, like he was very forward, like Brad's pretty full on. It can be a bit much being around somebody who's always so like go, go, go. And I was like, holy shit, I wouldn't have known that. And so I'd like to hear about how you manage those two different elements of the hunt and your personality, like wanting to be fairly mission focused, but then also not at the expense of not being present and in enjoying the experience of the hunt. Cause I struggle with this all the time.
Wow, what a great question, Jay. So let me. No one's ever. I don't think everyone's ever picked up on that. So anybody who is around me a lot, I think would describe me as fairly intense when it comes to hunting. Not because I'm like, "Arr," but I don't ever. I've never walked out into the field and thought it's not going to happen.
Right.
That's not arrogant. It's just like I have a it sounds arrogant when I say it, but that's not the way it should come across. It's more like
No,
my
I get it.
expectation is that eventually I'm going to get an opportunity, and it's up to me to take advantage of that opportunity. But eventually something's going to happen, and have that faith that it's going to happen. And so I don't stress out about it. I'm not, oh man, it's like day 5 of 7. Oh no, like, gosh, I wonder if tomorrow, I don't think that way. The past is the past and the future is the future. And I'm right here. And I know from my experience that no matter what's happened in the past, I don't care about that because tomorrow is a brand new day. And I have had so many times where you just need another hour, another minute, another 5 minutes. And that's what you need. So I don't stress out about it, but I don't have any downtime on hunts typically. So this was funny. When I was on my sheep hunt this year, so you have to have a guide in Canada, even as U.S. resident, right? You can't hunt sheep in Canada as U.S. resident without a guide by law. And my guide, Casey, was awesome dude. Idaho guy like me. He's like one of the boys. Like I would go hunting with him, just hanging out because we connected. He was so cool. He told me, he's like, man, it's really common for me to have like at least one day on a sheep hunt where we just like don't hunt because somebody needs a break. And I'm like, even if I felt like I needed a break, I'm not going to take it because we're here for a mission. So Josh and I have hunted together a lot in that film. Josh Kuntz, my buddy, who's in that film. And so he knows me very well. And if we're out there to kill elk, and every day I wake up and my expectation is like, we're going to kill something today. I'm not, again, it's like, it's a fine line between saying like having the confidence to be like, whatever it takes to do it today, like I will do that, whatever it takes. Don't, Casey, my guide in Canada had this saying that I really love, which he said to me, we did a long day and there was this mountain we were going to go up to glass from, and it was just like, man, we're just beat. He goes, I think it would be cowardly of us not to get up there. And I said, wow. I was like, that's such a great phrase. I've kept that in my head ever since then. So every time I find myself in a situation where, oh man, I don't know if I want to run up to that mountain, or I don't know if I want to go 2 miles across there. I don't know if I'll beat the elk or if I'll beat that deer before it disappears. It's like it would be cowardly of you not to at
Right.
this point in time to do that. So, anyways, my mentality is, I would say, calm, but relatively, my personality is, it can be fairly intense, but I can still have fun, but it doesn't lower the intensity level or my expectation, right? So I can have fun. I love joking around with people, camaraderie while I'm hunting, but there is a level of like, we're here to do something, and let's not forget that. So, so yes. And then also, yes, like being present in the moment is something I work at on a every single day when I'm on a hunt. So my friend, and I think about this not to get too sentimental, but one of my really good friends who doesn't hunt, so he'll never hear this, Ben, who was a climbing buddy of mine, lost use of his legs, had a climbing accident. He's in a wheelchair now. I think about Ben every single day I'm out hunting,
Right.
and it sounds cliche, but it's not. It's not. It's the God's honest truth that I do think about him every day I'm out hunting, and the fact that I can walk. Ben was a phenomenal athlete, world class climber. Can't walk anymore, right? And he's never going to walk. So what a gift that I have to just to be able to go out and do what we do. The thing that I have um, start I'm better at now than I used to be. So I would say like a young version of me would see an animal and just immediately go. A wiser version of me waits and thinks about it a lot more. And I'll give you a really good example of how that helped me this year. So the elk I shot in Idaho, the evening before, I was watching him work his cows out in the open. And we had about an hour and a half of daylight. I had plenty of time to get close to him distance wise. But the way the winds were and the topography, I would have had to come in on him, and it was really sketchy.
Right.
High chance of it not working out, of him blowing out of there. And I said, you know what? This is not a cowardly decision, but it is the right decision to say no. I think he's going to be around in the morning unless some wolves come through and push him out. I think he's going to be around and we can find him again. Well, guess what? He was right in the same zone next morning, and I killed him. So, man, the winds had shifted. It was much better setup. And I was like, great. Now the wind's going uphill, not downhill. We can come in from the bottom, see, whatever. That's a good decision of where like intensity is still really high. Expectations of mine are really high, but I have enough experience to where I know how to listen to my intuition a bit better than I did when I was younger, which was like, oh, you're being a coward if you don't just run over there right now and try and kill him. It's like, no, it might not always be the right move. So I don't know if I just answered your question or not.
No, it helped. Have you found, because I think about this a lot, and I do think a lot of it also comes down to like being okay with yourself, which and
Yeah.
having confidence. You've been a fairly successful hunter, like, upper percentile. Has it become easier to manage this? Because to illustrate this, part of what I still struggle with is I still feel like I'm trying to prove myself. And not
Yeah.
so much to other people. I'm old enough now and I've gone through enough shit that like it's on the list, but it's not at the top of the list. But it's like to myself, like I got my ass kicked in my personal season this year to the point where like I was doubting, like, do I even know what, like, have I even got any better at this
Yeah.
in the last,
Yeah.
5 years?
For sure. For sure.
But, and I have people on the podcast like yourself who like, Steve Speck is another guy who I think actually straddles that line very well, like yourself, of being mission focused, but also being present and talking to him about it and talking to you about it. I do feel like you guys are on this other side of this. Like, I don't know how much you guys have left to prove to yourself. And that's enabled you to be a little bit more quiet internally and kind of straddle that line a bit more successfully. Do you think there's something to that? Because I'm thinking about younger guys that have a hard time. And part of me is like, I don't want to pretend like it's just a mental game. It might be about, this is just something that's going to come to you a little bit easier, a little bit later in your career once you've had more experiences.
Man, no, I've talked about, so what you're talking about, which I think is a real thing for most hunters, whether or not they admit it or not, which is feeling like they have something to prove either to themselves or other people. I think a
Hmm.
big part of this is social media that fuels, it's a negative thing that it really annoys me in our culture that it's like if you go on social media and you follow 10,000 people and 15 of them have killed a really nice something
Yep.
out of 10,000, you think, God, what's wrong with me?
Hmm.
And that's such an unhealthy way to approach life in general, that, comparison, right? Um, I genuinely don't ever think about what other people think of me. I don't spend an ounce thinking about it. This is something that rock climbing has taught me. It's all personal. It's all about doing things that are personally meaningful to me. And I do have to, I would be lying if I said there are occasions where I see somebody with something like a big thing. I'm like, oh man, awesome. Wish I could, do that. But
Yeah.
my first thought is I am happy for other people, not jealous. Happiness, not jealousness. And that requires a conscious effort, I think, to do.
Yes.
It also just frankly requires like not paying attention to the bullshit on social media because that really is the root, I think, a lot of this. Um, and I don't, just speaking personally, it's like I have my own, let's talk about mule deer because I am a mule deer fanatic. I have my own personal standards for what a big deer looks like. I know what a big deer looks like. There are like very good friends of mine who have very different standards, lower standards. I don't look down on them or think less of them as a
Right.
hunter if they shoot something because I don't really care what people kill. I could care less. If you kill, and then somebody kills big stuff, small stuff, I do not care. That's your life. You live it how you want. I'm not doing what I do for you. Hopefully you're not doing what, the collective or the royal you are not doing what you're doing for anybody else. Um, so yeah, I just speaking personally, Jay, like I don't think about it too much. I think it really it can ruin your hunt. It can ruin your experience if you're worried about it. I will say, here's the other thing, because there have been people that we have had on our films who have felt this sense of, man, if I fail on film, people are going to know I'm a failure.
Yeah.
And they asked me, do you ever worry about that? Because if we have 5 hunts planned and film, we're going to film them. If we don't kill anything in those 5 hunts, it's not a great look,
Nope.
right? But you can't like worry about it or think about it.
Yeah.
You just can't. Otherwise, it would just drive you nuts. Like it would make you, yeah. So I don't think about it that much. I'm conscious of it sometimes, but the other, I just don't know. Like I don't know how to say it other than like I just don't care enough. Like if we made if we filmed 4 hunts and I didn't kill anything, I don't care what people think of me as a result of that. I don't have anything to prove to anybody. I've done what you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, and I think when you get rid of that insecurity, you start to have confidence in yourself, and that confidence leads you to make good decisions, not bad decisions. When you start freaking out, and I have had a friend who did this year. He got really stressed out about some circumstances on his hunt, and he started making bad decisions,
Yeah.
relocating when he shouldn't have. Like, just let me just get out of here. Let me move to a whole different unit. Like 3 times. It's like you just burned 3 days
Yeah.
traveling, and you should have just like stayed put and just like calmed down. But he was so like insecure and just like he started rattled, and then you start doing so. Um, so yeah, that's my mentality. I don't think about it. And I think when we first started making films back in like 2015, I probably I know I felt that pressure a bit more, just to not look like a fool. Not that I felt like a fool, but I didn't want to look like a fool on the internet, if that makes sense. I don't feel that way anymore, and I haven't for a long time. So I'm very much at peace with it. Like when Cal and I were hunting in Wyoming, we didn't kill anything. Could have killed stuff. Probably would have looked better on film if I would have shot a bull that had a very easy shot at it, 31 yards. But I didn't care. I don't care. I don't care what like that audience thinks of me if I shoot something or not. Like I've got my own objectives. I'm not doing this for the audience. You know what I mean? Like I'm doing it
Yeah.
for me. This is still my hunt. I don't do things for the camera. It's the same. Like I think sometimes I've heard this like I'm the same person you see on camera versus off camera. There's no difference. Like there's no facade. I'm not trying to do anything different, nor do I do anything different. It's the exact same.
Yeah.
Don't care. So, anyways, I don't know if that,
No,
but I think just to answer your question, it's a real
yes.
thing.
Yeah.
And I think it really comes down to people like wanting to be respected. And I'll just tell you, Jay, like I respect you as a human. I respect you as a hunter. So for me, don't, shed that insecurity. And I think you'll find that you'll have just more enjoyment on every day of your hunts.
Well, for me, I lost my way this year. I forgot who I was and who I am and what I put out there. Like I've never
Yeah.
been the stack bodies guy. I knew right from the beginning of the time I started making content and doing Mindful Hunter, like I come from a business background. So I was like, what is your competitive advantage? What can you do that no one else can do as good as you? And it was always communicate about what I'm experiencing. Like I really honestly believe I have a world-class ability to do that. And because I live in BC, I have the opportunity to go spend time in some of the most amazing places on earth. Those places don't have particularly high percentages of kill rates sometime. And I knew that if I wanted to build something long term, it was going to be about more that conscious approach to hunting. And if I look at what people value from consuming anything that I make, that's what it is. But I kind of lost that this year somewhere along the way, and like wanted to be the guy that was successful on every hunt. And one of the tactics I'm putting in place moving forward, like I've always wanted to bring people along. So I would always post about when I'm on my way to a hunt and do like a Q&A on the way. And then I realized I'm putting all this undue pressure on myself that I think everybody's waiting for me to come back, and I'm in my head about it. And especially this year, exactly what you talked about your friend going through, I noticed I started to do. Like the amount of pressure I was putting on myself caused me to start to make bad decisions that created the reality I was worried about happening, when it was like this self-fulfilling prophecy of failure, where it wasn't like I was creating the situation myself when I didn't need to. And so one of the tactics I'm putting in place moving forward is like, I'll talk generally about what I got coming up, but no more of this like posting the day I'm leaving. And like, I'm just creating unnecessary pressure for myself that I don't need to. And maybe that will change at some point in the future. But I just want to create a place where because it was like, I was just not mentally in a great headspace. And I'm like, I did not reorganize my entire life and work my ass off for the last 10 years so I could be miserable out here. Like if this is what it's going to be like. And you know what else? It was all the guiding. I felt none of that pressure guiding, which is almost weird because you think I would feel more pressure, but it was like, no, I'm confident. If there's animals around, I'm going to find them and we're going to kill them. Like it was so weird that it was so much more enjoyable. I felt hugely grateful and excited when a client would kill something. Like, and it was like coming out of that, it was like, how come I wasn't that free, mentally and emotionally when I was on my own hunts? And it's like, because you just got in your own head and you created this. And I know nobody really gives a shit. Like, it's so funny how much we think people are thinking about us compared to like how much
nobody's thinking about us.
No,
Nobody's
they don't care at all.
us.
Like I think about how much did I once this year think to myself, oh, I bet you Brad didn't kill it. Like not to break your hurt your feelings, but it's like, unless I saw you somewhere, like you don't enter into my consciousness. You know what I mean? But we create this weird fictitious reality that everybody's thinking about what a failure we are when we're not in a good headspace. And it's anyways, I'm kind of rambling too.
I think that's a really honest thing. I okay, let me give you two specific examples of what like unpressured hunting, when you take the pressure off yourself, what it can result in. Okay, so I gave you one, which is shooting the bull I shot this year with my bow, right? So good example. We did film that hunt. I got a camera guy with me, right? We're paying him money, whatever, right? Like we actually filmed an elk series this year, which is coming out next year. So we did 3 elk hunts, 3 solo elk hunts that were all filmed. My buddy Andrew shot an elk with his bow. I shot with my bow, and the only one that failed. Shout out to my brother Curtis. He failed with a rifle, not because he didn't have opportunities, but it's a whole. You'll see it in the film. But um, it's easy to say like my buddy Andrew shot an elk before I even left, so I knew he killed something.
Yeah.
It would have been easy for me to be like, well, Andrew did it. I got it. Now I need to do my part, right?
Mhm.
But I just didn't. Yeah, I didn't care that much. Didn't care that much. So, but so when I was Ryan, hunting elk, we went back with a rifle. So we hunted with the bows, didn't kill anything, didn't feel any pressure to kill anything. Neither of us did, which was fun because we had so many great encounters as a result. Went back with a rifle, and then it was a meat hunt, right? So I still had a Wyoming tag. He had a Wyoming tag, but I've already killed an elk. I'm mostly going just to help pack for him, be there as a buddy, right? And I told him, I said, if I see a giant, I'll shoot it. But otherwise, like, I'm not shooting an elk. I've already got plenty of game meat this year, and I've got more hunts, blah, blah. We find an elk first day. Ryan goes into kill mode. He's just like, elk are on the move. They're moving fast. And so we're going. Ryan, like, he ended up like shooting. I hope I'm not outing him. He shot and missed the bull once. The elk kind of like, mess off, go into this timber. And I was like, I said, okay, they're not stressed. I'm like, if you go after him, I'll bet you can get a shot on him before they go into this dark timber and we don't see him for again. So he goes after him. So I'm sitting there by myself and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go. I watch these elk go into this timber. I'm like, I'm just going to walk around the other side of that basin. It'll take me about 25, 30 minutes. I said, I'll bet they're going to be right there. So I go over there. Ryan's over here and like, I can see him and he can't see the elk. I'm like 330 yards from this bull. I find it right away. And I'm like, oh yeah. Like, so I went anyways. Ryan ended up killing the bull, but I was not pressured. I was just like making rational, calm decisions. There was no like, let's hurry up and get this. I was like, no, I know exactly. Let me just like pause.
Yeah.
I know how elk behave. I can tell by their behavior. They're not moving at a fast pace. It's 11 o'clock. They're going to go into that timber. They're going to chill. And that's exactly what they did. And I was able to just like calmly go around, find them. And I was like, I could have shot that bull right then and there. Right. And then the other situation is just my sheep hunt this year, which was that it would have been, I was conscious of the fact that that's a very like time and money intensive hunt, right? Sheep hunts aren't cheap. But I was okay coming home with nothing. And I consciously had to think about that every day and leading up to the hunt, but every day on the hunt, like no pressure. If we're going to find a sheep that I'm meant to shoot, like that's meant to be. And if I don't, it won't because we didn't work hard. It just wasn't meant to be. And that's okay.
Yeah.
So I think there are things you can do to keep yourself mentally in that like unpressured state.
Yeah.
But yeah, nobody's thinking about you. Like I don't think about what other people are doing. Nobody's thinking about what you're doing. If somebody I know shoots something great, I'm like, awesome. That is so cool. Like, but I rarely compare myself to other people. And if I do, it's very momentary. And then I kind of come back. I'm like, that's silly. That's dumb. Don't do that. And that permeates my entire life, not just hunting, but it is something that I think everybody should consciously work on. And I don't think most people admit, but so many people do it. Yeah. Everybody does it. We all do it. It's so common and it's so counterintuitive. It's so destructive because then I have had people who like, they get jealous and they get petty and then they, you know what I mean, towards other people.
Well, and they start to blur lines. Like, unlike or like me, a lot of the stuff that happens behind the scenes in the hunting industry. Yeah. And there's a lot of people who are blurring some ethical guidelines because of that self-imposed, pressure. And that's the other thing as a content creator, I know what other people are doing to put up those bodies. And it's like, and then you just got to sit back and be like, but I know other people don't know that. And it's like, you just got to it doesn't stop. You know what I mean? Because it's almost like you're now, not only are you comparing yourself against other people, you're unfairly comparing yourself. And that's one of the things I've always loved about hunting is that I've been a pretty successful guy in my life. So normally when I put my mind to something, sacrifice what is necessary and dedicate the appropriate amount of effort, I win. Hunting has been very hard for me, but it's one of the things I love about hunting because it keeps me humble. And to me, it's this vehicle for self-exploration. It's this mini-cosm that you get to go into and find all these things out about yourself. It's this pressure cooker. And then when you come back to Real life, you get to bring all those lessons back with you, and it impacts how I raise my daughter. It impacts how I handle my business. It impacts, how I deal with personal relationships. Um, and if it didn't, I've always said with hunting, everything has to go right, and you still need 5% luck. And so
Yeah.
it's like in a cognitive element, I understand that no matter how perfect I execute on this hunt, there is still always the potential that I'm going to come home empty-handed. I don't treat myself that way when I'm out
Mhm.
there sometimes. And that's my theme moving forward, is that I got to get back to that place. And I think it's because I did achieve a certain level of success, I guess, in the industry. Like, this is my day
Yeah.
job now. I'm able to make a living at hunting. For some reason, I started stacking on pressure on myself that I didn't need to. And the push now is like, get back to that spot where you know who you are. You have confidence in who you are as a man, and just be in that environment. Cause it's like, I don't have to convince myself to work hard. Like, I almost
Yeah.
have to
Yeah.
dial that
Yeah.
part
Yeah.
back a bit. Like, I know that if I go out there, I will do everything within my power in order to be successful. And now it's about manage that headspace so that it's more enjoyable. And the secondary benefit is your success rate's probably going to go up at the same time, because you're going to be making better decisions. You're going to be approaching things more fluidly. And so that's my kind of
Well, first of
motivation
all,
moving forward.
yeah, I mean, just acknowledging that. To be honest with you, Jay, nobody likes what you're acknowledging right now. I think is a big deal for most people, and they won't acknowledge it. So, like, that's like kudos to you for doing that. I really do believe this. People can accuse me of all sorts of voodoo magic, but I do think that the way you approach the mountains and your intent is really important.
Right.
You can.
Right.
I don't think you can always manifest your own reality, but I do think there is a kernel of truth there, and I do it all the time. So this is one of the things that I do. Other people can call me, say it's weird. I don't care. I'm going to keep doing it because I have been doing it, which is like you approach the mountains or any hunt with a sense of humility. You approach it with a confidence. You know you're going to work hard, right? So let's just assume everyone's going to work hard for a hunt, which is not always the case, but let's just assume that's the case.
Yeah.
And then you approach it with the right intent, and then you also try and I do visualize what I want from a hunt. I do it. I do it
Yep.
sometimes during the hunt. I do it before the hunt. Like, here's how I think this is going to happen, or here's how I'd like to happen. It doesn't always happen that way, but you can. I think that there is something to that I can't define, I can't prove, but I've been doing it for a long time, and have been pretty successful as a hunter as a result of a lot of things. But that is one of the things that I do on a regular basis. So yeah. Anyway, I think that's really sage advice, and I'm glad you're bringing it up. And there's one thing that I would just say to everybody out there is, like, just please stop comparing yourself to everybody else. Like, nobody cares. Who is it that says, like, nobody cares, work harder? Is that like a David Goggins?
No, I think it's a Haynes thing.
Haynes thing. I love that.
Yeah.
I actually do. Nobody cares. Nobody
Yeah.
cares. Nobody cares. Nobody cares if we shoot something big, small, medium. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. I don't care. Nobody cares, right? Like, so just stop it. Stop. Just
Yeah.
go out there and do it for the reasons that are important to you, whatever that is. Yeah.
I love it. I love the vein of this conversation, but people are going to get pissed off at me if we don't nerd out a little bit on
Let's
here.
nerd out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, any standout pieces this year, and please feel free to include anything that you're working on or planning to release from Argali. But yeah, just kind of interested in anything that stood out to you on your hunts this year that might be new, or even an older piece that you were taken for granted for a while.
Yeah. So let me start with some clothing pieces that really stood out. I happen to be wearing one of them right now. This is a Patagonia mid layer. It's like a fleece. It's an active insulation fleece layer that they make. It's just the Nano Air. I can't remember what the hell it's called. I'll find the name of it. Maybe you can put it in this show notes. But this piece right here, crazy warmth for the weight. It also doesn't absorb moisture. I was really impressed with this piece. I have said last year, and I found it again to be true this year, that the Patagonia Nano Air Puffy is one of the best jackets made, period. It is an active insulation synthetic jacket that is incredibly light, but insanely warm for what you get. I don't think it gets enough recognition for the quality that it is. Love that jacket. It went with me on most hunts this year. So a couple clothing pieces. I'll come back to our stuff here in a minute, but I want to talk
Okay.
about some other stuff just so I make sure I'm not just talking about our stuff. I did. I'll tell you one thing. One pair of pants I really liked this year was the Sitka mountain pants. I wish they would put a side zip on those pants.
Interesting.
I like the fabric.
Yeah.
Can't stand the fact they don't have side zips. I don't know why they don't have side zip in that pant because it's warm, but
Yeah.
it's super quiet.
Yeah.
So I
I like
did.
the fit of those too. I can't wear
Yeah,
the Timberlines. Unfortunately, I bought my mountain pants when I was a lot bigger. And the current ones don't fit me because I agree. Those are excellent pants.
they're a good pair of pants. Why they don't have side zips on them, I don't know. I'm sure they have their reasons. I haven't talked to anybody over there, but I found that they were great for archery hunting. But like, if I was during the middle of the day having to hike up a mountain in the blazing sun, they were just miserably hot.
Yep.
And I was pretty committed. I mean, they're what I had on for my
Yeah.
hunt when I was in Idaho. And it was pretty miserable during the day wearing them sometimes when it was hot out. But other than that, I thought they were like they held up well, comfortable, durable, and quiet, which is really important. And then let's see, the only like other like piece of gear, non Argali stuff that I like to talk about food real quick, but I'll talk
Yeah.
about in a second. Um, I used this, my friend Garrett, who was on our hunt with Cal and I, had this water filter. It's a Katadyn B-free water filter. So it's like got the little flexible bladder with the built-in water filtration system. I really hate water filters just as a general rule of thumb. Like I just
Mm.
hate using them. I hate dealing with them. They're bulky, heavy, whatever. Don't like them. I've gone to using Aquamira drops a lot, but that there's potential side effects there with using Aquamira drops a bunch. But on that hunt, he had one of those, and I took it on another backpack hunt, and I found it to be fantastic. It's so
Okay.
light and compact. It has a bottle built in that I could use that to fill up my other water really easily. Um, I don't filter like if I'm near the head of a spring, I pretty much never filter water. I'm
Dude,
one of those
I did a
guys.
whole rant about this year. 15 years in the forestry industry in BC. I didn't even know what a water filter was.
Yeah,
Like at
totally.
work every day, I'd literally just stick my Nalgene in whatever creek I walked past. We never thought ever about it. And then
About
I started
filtering.
hunting and everybody's like, oh my God, you got to filter everything. And I don't want to give people bad advice, but it's like chill out a little bit there's not Giardia in every single creek flowing down a mountain. Like if you
No.
think about what you're doing, there's a lot of cases where filtering is not even that necessity. But quick question, I don't want to derail
Yeah.
you. Why not the SteriPen? Because that's what I love that.
So batteries dying,
Okay,
and having to carry extra batteries.
fair.
So that's the only issue I have with the Stereo Pen.
The
Other than
new
that, it's a great
USB
product.
rechargeable one solved a lot for me
Okay.
because I'm always going to carry a battery bank for something like my
Yeah.
phone or
Yeah.
GPS or something like that. And I did have really bad luck with the old Adventurer Opti that took the weird like CR 1232, whatever those like
Yeah.
little lithium ones. But since they've moved to the USB rechargeable one, that solved a lot of my original concerns. But
I
that's an
don't.
interesting.
Yeah, and just as general, this is my bias. A general rule is like I don't like relying on electronics for
Fair.
anything critical because they're just things can happen.
Yep.
I know lots of people that use a stereo pen and love it. I've used them. I just don't like to rely on them, especially if I'm like on a 10-day hunt.
Yeah.
I'm just like, how many batteries do I need to take? Anyways, so that's just my
No, it's
bias.
fair
I'm not
point.
saying
Fair
they're bad product or anything. And then I'll say food. This year, I spent a lot of days backpacking, a lot. And I got really sick and of what I was eating and had to really change up some of my food. So, and what I usually do is like early in the season, I'll buy bulk, a lot of different stuff. I just go buy tons of it. And then I just make a bunch of lunches to last me this year. And I was very happy with some of the choices I made. So like Justin's nut butter pouches. I don't know why I haven't started using those earlier. Amazing. Amazing. What am I been doing my whole life? Like not using those things. And then like mini chomps, the chomps beef sticks or whatever.
No, I never
You
had
make
though.
them
I
in
got to write this
small.
one down.
Yeah, mini chomps. They're great. Little meat sticks, nice little refreshing snack. And then I've been very adamant about for long endurance type hunts using some sort of drink mix or
Yeah.
salt pills, and element sticks. If there's a better recovery
Dude,
drink stick, I have not
love
found it yet.
them.
Element, you know, yeah, fantastic,
You
phenomenal. They
got to be
have,
okay with slightly salty flavor, but I actually really
yeah,
like the slightly salty flavor.
yeah,
Huge fan of those. I use them at home now, almost every day.
yeah,
Love those
fantastic.
element packs.
Fantastic product. And
Yep.
then I was having some on the nutrition side, even on some this last late season hunt, which was quite exhausting. I was getting some cramping even with using element packs. And so I actually
Yep.
started working like an ibuprofen. Maybe this is just like old guy stuff. I don't know. I started taking an ibuprofen one at night to prevent, because I was fine during the day that I'd get in my sleeping bag and all of a sudden like my inner thigh would like cramp up and it was
Yep.
so painful.
Been there.
Even with the hydration and the sodium and magnesium. So anyway, so I started working an Advil in, and that resolved the issue. So just on the body care and maintenance, like sodium, making sure every night I'm drinking something to replenish electrolytes, and then also just like an Advil if I'm really having a high exertion day, or excuse me, ibuprofen was really helpful. And then just to keep going on the gear front, we, I guess we have, this is like not public knowledge yet, but I'll say it here, Jay.
All
We're launching
right.
a sleeping bag line.
We got an exclusive. I love it. I wondered if that was going to come up. I love it. I
Yeah,
love it.
we're launching a sleeping bag line in January. And as you know, we gave you a bag to test.
Yep.
We have a bunch of people that have been testing them. I've been testing them. I carried throughout the season a little digital uh, hydrometer that connects to an app. And I would leave that outside so I know the outside temperature. I could
I've been
log.
meaning, I'd like to know, maybe offline, you can send me the one that you decided
Yeah,
to use,
yeah,
because I've been looking at a couple different ones from Amazon. Because again, for me doing reviews, for me to be able to come back and know exactly what the temperature
exactly what it was.
every night would be just a game changer, man.
And it
Because it's
maps it
such a
out.
perceptive
It's
nightmare.
so,
Like,
I
how
know.
cold was it? I don't know. Like, unless water froze, I don't know how, but yeah, anyways, I don't mean
Okay,
to
yeah,
just derail
I'll
you, but I
say that
want,
I got a cheap one, cheap
okay.
light one. It was really handy, but I did that because we obviously like our sleeping bags. We did, extensive testing in the lab
Yep.
on temperature ratings, and one of the things that is unique about our bags is we call our honest temperature ratings, where we use comfort ratings for our temperature ratings, not survival ratings. But I also wanted to know subjectively, what does it feel like in certain temperatures, right? So
Mhm.
I sleep cold, so I know I need typically a warmer bag. How cold was it actually during the night, and how did I feel? Did I wake up cold or not? And being able to actually have that data rather than like using what the weather forecast said it was going to be. It's like there's so much variability there. And what I found was, so on this last late season hunt, which was a great gear testing trip too for our sleeping bags, it was down. I used our 0 degree bag. It was true 0 degree weather, and I know that because I could map the temperature out.
Yep.
But it was anywhere between like 0 and 10 degrees most nights when we were there Fahrenheit, and I felt warm, which surprised me. And I had a kind of a little bit heavier weight merino bottom on, and I had a base layer top with this black fleece thing on. So that's what I wore inside my bag,
Yep.
and I was very impressed. I've never used a 0 degree bag and felt zero or warm in 0 degree weather. So that was good. I didn't quite know what to expect, and you can't mimic that testing in a lab. You have to
No.
do it outside in real world conditions. That's the only way you know what it's actually like. You can do it. I mean, there's some things you do in a lab, but you have to field test stuff. And so, but so anyway, so our sleeping bags, and I of course used our 20 and our 0 throughout the season. And I was really happy with how they performed. I was also, again, our Elite Dream pillow, the way it connects to our sleeping bag, I loved it. And again, this sounds super self-serving, but backpacking pillows have been the bane of my existence. I've never found one I liked. I've also never been able to keep one in my hood or just like from escaping from me during the middle of the night. Our pillow, I'll be curious to hear your experience, but it never left, right? Because it connects inside the hood. So it was always there. It was comfortable for me. Back to your earlier point about people not knowing things intuitively. Most of our testers, we didn't tell them that it's designed to be stuffed. So
Okay.
let me describe this pillow to people real quick.
Yeah.
It is a 15 by 11-inch pillow, soft face fabric. There's some padding built into the top of the pillow, but it is specifically designed to be stuffed with a shirt, rain jacket, puffy jacket, something you have to give it volume. It's not designed to be used without something in it. I didn't tell people that because I wanted to see if they understood it.
Yeah.
Right? There's a side zip, bright color red zipper. I can't remember if I told you that. Maybe I told you that. I don't
No,
know.
you didn't. But I'm interested I'm kind of confused at this point that other
Yeah.
people may not have stuffed it, but
Most people didn't stuff it, and
oh,
they said
shit.
your pillow's too flat. And I said, well, that's because
Of
it's
course
designed
it
to
is.
be it's designed to be put something in it to give it volume. But this is one of those things where that's not on. And these are smart people who backpack a lot, right?
Yeah.
So we now have designed a piece of a tag that goes along with it that just like it's bright red and it says, like I'm designed to be stuffed. Scan me before use, and it's a QR code, and it goes to a
Right.
video showing like different objects you can put in it.
Well, I even have some pretty firm takeaways about how to stuff it through like
Yeah,
problem solving. Like I was trying to make it bigger, and if you put too much stuff in it, it gets too hard. And
it's too
that's
hard, and
why
it gets kind of like domey.
like a weird shape. And
Yeah.
that's why one of my pieces of feedback was I would have appreciated stretchy fabric on the back, because then in my mind, the more stuff I put in it, because I'm a big guy and I'm a side sleeper, filling this gap is very challenging. And if I sleep like this, it messes with my neck. But then you said you'd actually tried some stuff and you had some very good reasons why you'd went back to the non-stretchy fabric. And then I figured out if I actually stuff this more irregularly, like I was folding things and then sticking them in, you're better off. And you can even just use a rain jacket. Like it doesn't have to be something with loft or even something that's soft.
Nope.
But I was better off just like stuffing
Yes.
it. So it
Yes.
would like create more nooks and crannies and there would be
Yes.
more volume in there. And then the pillow would actually be a little bit bigger, but it would still kind of retain the loft throughout the night and provide continued support. I've used the pillow even on my hunts when I wasn't using the bag for weight, where I had the 20 Fahrenheit one and can confirm the temperature ratings are very liberal, or very conservative. I don't know how you want to phrase that.
Yeah.
The bag is way warmer and I sleep hot. So for me, that 20 bag, I would treat it like a 0 bag. Like it was.
Oh, no kidding. Seriously?
Oh yeah. Like so one of the
You're on
things
hot.
I was experimenting with this year is ultralight sleep systems. So what I was running on most of my ultralight hunts was a 50 quilt from
Wow.
Enlightened Equipment, the Enigma. And I was testing about what did I have to wear inside of that? Because I'm trying to have this like integrated approach. I think a lot of people are double dipping on their sleep systems. They're taking a sleep system that's good to a certain temperature, and then they're taking enough clothing to also exist in that temperature.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're talking about an ultralight hunt, like a sheep hunt, a goat hunt, something where you're going in for 10 or 12 days, it's like, where is the line where those two things cross over? And I don't need to bring both. I don't need two ways to get to the desired temperature. I just need one, and then I can combine them. So I was running a 50 quilt, and then I was experimenting. What do I have to wear in that? And I got down to below freezing. And I know that because I was in Wyoming. I woke up, the crust of my Nalgene was frozen, and I was on a sleeping pad with no shelter. So it's just me out in the elements. I had a 50 quilt. I was wearing a regular pair of boxers, the Stone Glacier de Havilland pants, and then on my top, I was wearing the Stone Glacier Avro synthetic hoodie, the Sitka ambient hoodie, and the Stone Glacier Grumman puffy. And then I had the Jetstream beanie hat on and all my hoods, and it got down to below freezing in that 50 quilt, and I slept through the night. I'm not going to pretend it was like a great, super comfortable sleep. But if we want to say like, where is that line? I could get away to freezing temperatures in a 50 quilt.
Wow.
Well, I forget where I was going on that. All I was saying is that I tend to sleep very warm. So especially because I tend to wear layers inside of my sleeping bag, I would take that. If I have my puffy stuff with me, I would take that 20 sleeping bag. You guys let me test on a 0 degree hunt all day and I would feel very comfortable doing so.
Yeah, I mean, one of I think everybody knows this too. It's one of the most annoying things about temperature ratings and sleeping bags is
Yeah.
the wide degree of variety that companies use. There's very little transparency and honesty, it feels like. I mean, I
Hmm.
own a negative 20, negative 40 degree sleeping bag that I have used. It's made by a very mainstream outdoor gear company. I've used it down to like 15 degrees and been kind of cold.
Yeah.
It's like negative 20. It's rated negative 20, but it's like it's the survival rating of the bag, not the comfort rating.
Yep.
And that was, I got it years ago before I really understood what temperature ratings were all about. So I think that's, I feel like we're going to be swimming uphill trying to communicate that to people about like the differences between
We
our
will.
bags. So like our 20-degree bag has
Yeah.
so much down in it relative to a lot of other people, which increases the cost of the product. They're going to say, well, your 20-degree bag is maybe more expensive than this other 20-degree bag
Or heavier.
or heavier. And I would say yes, but look at why it has more
Yeah.
downfilling in it, more downfill in it. The other thing we do is we use non-treated down in our
Yeah.
bags, which again is not the norm. I have a very interesting video that you will love to see coming out, a submersion test, water submersion test of untreated versus treated down. I have the exact same down, super high quality down, one treated with waterproof coating, one a water resistant coating, one without. And I'm going to show people this is what untreated down and treated down like. Let's just soak them for a while, stir them around, and like let me show you how naturally waterproof or water resistant, excuse me, untreated down is.
I think it's marketing BS. We
It
talked
is.
about this at the Hunt Expo last year
Yeah.
because you were just starting to toy around with this bag and we were talking about it. I was like, oh, that's very interesting. So I went home and I started doing more research on that. Another company, Enlightened Equipment, who I like a
Mhm.
lot, they stopped using treated down years ago. And I
Oh,
talked to
really?
them about it, and they said they had better results over stuffing than using treated down because it was more loft. The other thing is the length of the bag. Like with what you pay for a down bag, and if you look at how long down bags used to last compared to how long they're lasting now, like that thing should be good for 10, 15 years if you take
Yeah.
care of it properly, clean it
Yeah.
properly, store it properly.
Yep.
And there's also a bunch of research to say that treated stuff loses loft significantly faster over the long term than untreated down. Because I think it's some type of like waxy type coating,
It's
and
a
it actually
paraffin-based coating. Yeah, it's
right, and it
paraffin, which is a
actually
wax.
yeah.
A wax.
So and it causes it to compress and flatten out, and you can't get it to like where with traditional down, yeah, that happens every now and then. You buy the right treatment, you wash it, you dry it correctly, and it's like you're right back at square one. It's puffy, everything's back where it's supposed to be. But that treated down apparently does not have that same kind of recuperative potential as
It
standard
doesn't.
high
And
quality down.
And it doesn't because think about it, like what is even it's a wax-based coating, right? It's
Yeah,
like it's not rocket science here. So like think about like compressing that bag, like putting in your backpack, taking it out, putting in your backpack, taking it out. So you go on 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 hunts. The loft of your bag, which affects your temperature rating and its ability to keep you warm, is going to be very different than when you first got it. So when you first get it, you're like, oh, this is a very soft, lofty bag. Well, my comment to people is like, you should think about the loft of your bag, not when you buy it, but after, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 hunts. Like, how
yeah,
does it look after that? And if it still looks good, great. But paraffin-based coatings, these waterproof, water-resistant coatings, they just negatively impact the loft of your bag. But the reason that most companies use water-resistant down is because there's this fear people have that like, well, if you don't have it, then water's just going to get absorbed in your down. You're going to get cold. And my answer is like, that's bullshit. You have been fed a line of garbage for a long time by companies marketing water resistant down that everyone's just afraid not to use it. And except for there are some very big mainstream companies that use untreated down. Western Mountaineering, Feathered Friends, who I think are two of the best companies when it comes to making super high quality bags. They don't use treated down. Why not?
yeah.
Take a look at it. So we're going to be swimming upstream a little bit with our stuff, but it's the right choice, and I'm okay with that. And I think it's going to take people coming to their own conclusion, but we're putting out some content. Hopefully, people understand what we're saying and why we made the choices we make. Up to the consumer whether or not they agree with us or not. But I think unequivocally see with our submersion test that untreated down is very, very, very water resistant. And as I like to remind people, can never forget that geese float.
Right. It's true.
So,
I'll give another
something.
shout out to the pillow because and that was why I brought up the testing with the quilt. Even on the hunts when I wasn't running the Argali bag, that was still my new number one choice for a pillow. And from a weight perspective, it seems kind of counterintuitive. I used to use that Big Agnes Q Core, which is like 2.4 ounces or something. So if you're really looking to shave ounces, and I think yours is it 4 or is it 7?
3.5,
3.5.
3.5.
So round up to 4 ounces. So a couple ounces heavier, but significantly impact the quality of my sleep in a positive direction, and was still very usable on when I didn't have that bag with that particular
Yeah.
attachment system. Like it's still, I think because air-filled pillows tend to like pop out because they don't have the
Yeah.
ability to mold, whereas like you have this hole in your neck, and I found yours. Yeah, okay. Every now and then you still got to wake up and like kind of shove it back in, but had much greater tendency to stay put and kind of nestle in the crook of my neck than come shooting out like the air-filled pillows do.
Yeah, the air-filled pillows are really annoyingly
Yeah.
uncomfortable. I have a bunch of them. I hate all of them. I've used them a
Yeah.
bunch. It feels like you're sleeping on a bouncing balloon. Your ear hurts. Oftentimes you sleep on your side like I do.
Yeah.
It's not a good design, but it's become like the industry standard for a lot of people, a lot of companies, and I don't like them. But I do know that having a comfortable pillow, we talk about our sleep system that we created, not just a sleeping bag, right? So we
Right.
thought about the whole, like what do you need to sleep through the night? Because that's really the focus of our systems is warmth and comfort too. So I can't remember if I talked to you about this, Jay, but like when we actually surveyed a bunch of people who spent a lot of nights backpacking and just asked them, we didn't tell them we were coming up with a sleeping bag, but we just asked them like, how would you rank your priorities for what you want in a sleeping bag? And like unequivocally, everybody, the warmth and comfort were the most important things that people pointed out. It wasn't armholes. It wasn't a feature rich.
Don't get me started.
It was, you know what I mean? It wasn't
Yeah.
it wasn't like, oh, I need it to transform into a jacket.
Yeah, it's not a Swiss Army knife. It's a sleeping
It's not a
bag.
Swiss Army. It's a sleeping bag. I want to be warm and comfortable. I want to see.
Yeah.
I want to get some sleep when I go to bed. And it's like it's very simple. So our focus has been very, very, very simple. How do you
Yeah.
create a warm, comfortable sleep experience? And that includes the pillow and the bag. And that was our focus. Very simple. And I think we nailed. I mean, I'm again like I'm not tooting our home, but I really feel like we did a good job with that.
Yeah.
That's why I'm so excited about it. I haven't been this excited about a new product category in a very long time. And we've been working on it for years.
I think, you guys in EXO jumped to mind. The singularity of purpose in product design, I think is like the hallmark of good quality products. Like as soon as you start getting something to do more things, it just gets worse at the one thing that you started making it good for in the first place. Like Steve gets asked all the time, why don't you add this to the pack? Why don't you add that to the pack?
Yeah.
And it's like, because that's not what our packs do. Our packs are meant to do this. And within those guidelines, we're going to make the best possible pack. And that almost maniacal drive to stay like pure through the design process. And I feel the same way about most of the Argali products that I've had the good fortune to test. Like it's meant to do one thing very, very well instead of a bunch of stuff average.
Yeah, I agree. That's my feeling on that. That is my philosophy is like know what you're trying to make and don't deviate from it. There's shiny objects, right?
Yeah.
Well, what if we did this? We could do, I'll give you one. Somebody I really respect said, I wish you would have put a center zip on your sleeping bag. And I was like, I'm glad you asked me that and brought it up because we thought about it. We were going to put a center zip on the bag, but zippers are sources of heat loss. They even
Right.
with a great draft tube along the zipper, it's still a source of heat loss. I don't care what you do. Zipper, like air will come in from the zipper and leave from the zipper, and especially within the center. If you look at we use also what we call like body map baffling. So we took a heat signature of the human body and like where do you emit the most heat, and we constructed our baffles and our down allocation in each of those baffles around the human heat body index, like where you lose most heat. So if you look at a heat map of the human body, like the center of your chest, no surprise there, but the 6 inches of the center of your chest are like the most important place where you lose heat.
Hmm.
And then your shoulders, and then you go down towards the bottom of your torso, like you emit less heat there. But so like center of your torso is very important for trapping heat, right? So if you
Yep.
put a zipper right there, it's going to be a source of heat loss. So it would be hard. It's harder to maintain that temperature rating and harder to maintain the trapping heat if you put a zipper there. So we put it on the side intentionally. Now you could argue it's marginally more annoying to zip up and down, but our focus is on comfort and warmth and not necessarily like creating a zipper that's just a little bit easier to use. Now some people might say like I'd rather have a center zip and a bag that's not as warm and comfortable. Totally fair.
Yep.
But that's not what we're doing. We're trying to make a bag that is really focused on warmth and comfort. And there's a trade-off for that, right? And we weren't willing to make it.
Another product that jumps to mind, because I am planning some deep winter hunting this year. Everybody wants me to try the new Sitka Hyper Down jacket.
Mm-hmm.
And my issue is, again, and listen, if you're looking for a combo piece, I think it's a great combo piece. But I think it kind of does two things not great. I think you can achieve the same effect with a better puffy and a better rain jacket than trying to like put these two things together and come up with like a DWR treated 27D kind of waterproof. Like where I go goat hunting in the winter, I have no choice but to bring a rain jacket. Now, if you're in a super arid environment, maybe like the Rockies in Colorado, where you're not expecting any precipitation, then that's a different conversation. But when I'm looking at the weight of that piece and the feature set of that piece, I would prefer to have the combo of a high grade puffy with a high grade lightweight rain jacket, because I have two pieces now that are specifically designed to do things very well. And when I put them together, I get the combined effect of what it looks to me like the Hyper Down was designed to do, but I've got more versatility in my system. And you start to, because I got to bring a rain jacket anyways.
Yeah.
So it's like now that I'm going to be 12 ounces heavier bringing the Hyper Down with the rain jacket than I would be just bringing, a bigger style puffy jacket with the rain jacket. And I think the backcountry is where these things really start to become apparent, because you're counting ounces and doing the rest of the stuff. Like, but just that piece in particular kind of really stood out to me, because I was like, oh, maybe this, because I have the older Sitka Windstopper hoodie, which is like a furnace of a jacket, but it weighs 2 full pounds. And when you start looking at your kit for, a 10-day deep winter hunt, a 2-pound jacket, but the Grumman doesn't do it because it's not big enough. Like it's going to be so cold. Like we're talking minus 15 Celsius, minus 25 Celsius, minus 15 Fahrenheit. Yeah. I need something kind of one level up from that. But yeah. And it's interesting how I think the bigger companies have a tendency to focus on these more combined product, and the more boutique companies seem to do a better job at, like, I think that's why Stone Glacier was great, especially when it first started. Like, I think that Grumman puffy was the best puffy on the market for a long time, because Kurt was very intentional. Like, this is a puffy. It's not meant to be walked through the bush with. We're going to put the thinnest potential shell. You can rip that thing just by doing up a zipper, but that it's not meant to be like an everyday jacket. It's meant to be a hyper light, highest warmth to weight ratio possible puffy jacket. And I do think, obviously there's examples that would not go in with this, but I think the smaller companies tend to do a better job at creating specialized products, and those bigger companies tend to focus more on creating those hybrid products.
Yeah. And I think I don't know anything about that Sitka jacket, but I certainly have seen this at other companies that I can speak to, is like at some point, maybe it's like, I don't know, private equity or having a corporate company, they're just like, hey, we need to create some more SKUs. So like, what do you got? And so then your starting point is not how do we make a product that's filling a niche? It's like, how do we make a product and find a purpose for it? And those are two very different places to start from. Yeah, and I don't want to say anything out of turn. Like I don't know where Sitka started from on their particular jacket, but I agree with you with concept that like I think it's important to start from a place of like we feel like this product is filling a need that exists in the marketplace for our consumer, and we have a very clear purpose for it. And that is that I do agree that is the thing that smaller companies there are a number of them out there, and I probably put us in that category that are able to focus and keep it very simple and targeted because we don't have people above us we have to please. We don't.
Yeah. And I also want to be fair. I think there's probably a lot of great use cases for that jacket, but the way people have been approaching me, and this is how I get a good sense of the temperature of the general person about how a product is being perceived, because what they're asking me is like, oh, is this the new Perfect Puffy? Like, is this the thing that I'm going to be able to take without a rain jacket and it's going to be small enough to be on a backpack hunt, but big enough that I can do like late season snow covered elk hunts with it? And that's when I have to stop for a minute and like break it down to them. Like when you look at how heavy this thing is and what it's actually like, no, it's not. It's a good product for certain use cases, but it's not a Swiss Army knife that's going to solve all your problems.
Right. Right. Which makes sense. Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But yeah, anyway, so I don't know how we got off on this tangent, Jay, but I agree with you vigorously.
Yeah. And I have kept you for well long enough. I'm sure you got a bunch of stuff to do today, and I greatly appreciate the time. So people can expect to see the sleeping bag line in January. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to reach out to myself. I ran it extensively. I still plan to run it on some more kind of deep winter stuff later this year. I'm more than happy to give my personal feedback on it. And then what else can people keep an eye out for? What type of film schedule or what's the next thing upcoming, and any other product information you want to let people in questions on?
So we'll start. We've got our first film we'll launch in January. We've got my sheep film will launch at Sheep Show. Anybody come down to Reno, and then we're still working on our release schedule. But I think spring, summer, most of our content's going to come out. And then product wise, we've got a lot of stuff we're testing. I mean, our normal cadence is, I have anywhere between 12 and 15 products that are various stages of development, design, testing right now. We do have some new tent designs. I have no clue what the production timeline is for, but some very interesting new tent designs we're playing around with right now, testing. I think will be very interesting to people who like tents. Yeah, nothing else I think I can talk about just yet, but lots of things.
I noticed you very
on.
Specifically using the word tent, not shelter. So are we expecting to see some floored, more like traditional, but with the Argali twist tents?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So we're playing around with freestanding tents.
Okay.
And also designs that are floorless still, but think like more headroom designs. So they're floorless shelters, but we're playing around with designs that would give you, instead of one center pole, like the idea being that how do you create more headroom in a floorless shelter? More usable space. So
there's a lot of wasted space. Dude, I have a 12-man seek outside that I can't put 3 Cabela cots and a stove in.
Correct. Yeah.
And then by the time I got the Cabela cots, I literally have, like, if you calculated the volume of cubic meters of wasted space, it's like half this shelter is useless.
Correct. Yeah. And so the idea for this really came from, our 8-person, our Yukon tent, which is a 2-pole 8-person.
Which I think is a great design.
The feedback on that has been so great because there's nothing like it in the floorless shelter world, lightweight floorless shelter world. It's just been unanimously like, can't believe nobody, kind of like, I can't believe nobody's made this before kind of thing. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, well, what it is about that shelter that people love, it's the headroom and the usable space. And so I'm trying to bring some of those same design principles to our other style of tents. And so that's what we're doing right now. It's just kind of figuring out the right balance of space and weight. Like what's the trade-off? What's a reasonable trade-off when it comes to, I want a 1-person tent. When you want a 1-person tent, typically you're willing to sacrifice some space and comfort for weight. when you want a two-person tent, like how much are you willing to sacrifice for weight? How much comfort are you with? So those are the things we're playing around with right now in terms of size, space, shape, etc. So anyways, more to come on that. Hopefully we'll have something maybe we can talk about in next year. And then then there's a bunch of stuff I can't talk about now that I will talk to you about
Excellent.
at the right time.
I love it. It's always a blast, man. I greatly appreciate
likewise.
you taking the time. I feel a kinship both on the kind of like approach to hunting and, obsession with product. So it's always
likewise.
enjoyable when we get a chance to chat.
Likewise. Thanks for having me on, Jay. It's always a pleasure to chat with you, man.
My pleasure. All right. We'll chat soon, Brad. Cheers.